This episode of Test Drive is brought to you by Elmec and their EV Duty Smart Home Charger.
As I continue my push towards more EVs, we're going to be doing things like this, where we're taking a look at a vehicle we've already featured here on Test Drive, but seeing how it's changed for this model year. So our snapshot is on this 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV GT with the S all-wheel control system. Now, what is different for 2018? Some things, it did receive a facelift in 2019. However, we did not get the slightly larger battery here. We still have the 12 kilowatt hour battery with the 2-liter Myvec 4-cylinder engine, 1-speed transmission, and the dual motors. Those two electric motors produce 80 horsepower each for a total of 160 horsepower. The front has 101 pound-feet of torque, where the rear has 144 pound-feet of torque. While you're in electric mode, it uses both motors to drive all four wheels. So what has changed with this facelift for our market? Well, we have different rims. The lower chrome grille portion has flipped upside down. I think it's got a better look to it. You have fog lights that are square now with a wraparound chrome design to it, and it is still a pretty inoffensive design. You'd be pretty hard pressed to hate it outright, but you're also not necessarily going to fall in love with it. The interior has seen some significant changes, including the infotainment system. Before, you had controls for the applications of music on the right side, those buttons were there, and a physical knob to switch the volume on the left. That has now changed. All the button controls are along the bottom. It now uses a soft touch button to change the volume. I'm not a huge fan of that. Along with that, the other center stack controls have changed, including the HVAC controls. It's updated. I wouldn't say it's necessarily more modern, but it does give it a different look over the 2018, and some of the buttons have been reassigned as well. On the 2018, we would see the passenger seat belt and airbag status, along with the hazard light and eco button. Those have now shifted up. You have the passenger airbags in the headliner, and you've got the eco button now moved down into the lower portion of the center console. The other two major interior changes over the 2018, the 9-speaker Rockford Fosgate audio system with a 10-inch subwoofer has been removed. We are now getting an 8-speaker Mitsubishi Power sound system on this. I don't know. I guess they've taken it off to save a little bit of cost. And we've also gotten quilted leather interior seats on this, whereas before they were just a flat leather interior. The price has gone up by $2,000 for this top-end GT trim. Now, about 2 years ago when we featured this, I said on our road test that we could only get about 30 kilometers on a single charge before it would kick over to the gas system. We did feature that slightly later in the season. It's the middle of July right now, and we have pretty decent temperatures, very humid though. So when we drove this home, if you follow me on Instagram, I said I wanted to try to get home from picking this up, which was about 105, 106 kilometers without using any gas, because this is one of the only vehicles you can buy that isn't a full electric that uses a level 3 charger. The only other one actually that we have driven was the BMW i3 range extender, but that was meant to be an electric car that they added a gas generator to it. This is always meant to be a plug-in hybrid with a small battery, but it has that level 3. So what I did is I charged it up twice on the way home and pretty much got the whole way without having to use any gas. We actually averaged 0.8 liters per 100 kilometers. I went about 10 kilometers where the gas system had to engage. So I got about 96 kilometers fully electric by charging it. However, it cost me $7.40 to use that quick charge. On top of the cost it would have been to have this vehicle fully charged when I first picked it up. So it's not necessarily going to save you money, but you are at least helping the environment somewhat by not using as much gas. So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump on the inside of this. We do have our 100 kilometer test loop, something that did not exist when we drove this vehicle 2 years ago. So we're going to tell you how this vehicle did on that 100 kilometer test loop and everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. Get the most out of your 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV with the EV Duty Smart Home Charger. This level 2 smart charger allows you to do everything from scheduling to maintenance to see how much it costs to charge your vehicle. For more information about the EV Duty Smart Home Charger and their entire line of solutions, visit elmec.ca. So we're behind the wheel of the 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid. It feels just like the 2018 that I drove, and we talked a little bit about what's changed on the inside here. It still feels like you're driving a shuttlecraft from Star Trek. Some small changes were pluses, like the fact that we now have LED high beams. Nice thing there. The exterior has changed just slightly. You barely notice it unless you're really looking. And essentially, the biggest complaint that we had about this vehicle was the infotainment system not giving us the information we really wanted when it came to our EV driving and habits and things like that. It hasn't really gotten better. It's definitely not worse, thankfully, but for the most part, it's still not the greatest infotainment system. I can at least give you an accurate number now on our test loop, because when you watch the video that we did on the 2018, I say that we just can't give those numbers because it wouldn't allow us to use a continuous system to report on our fuel economy. Now that's changed. We're doing our test loop. So on the test loop, we completed it in 4.7 liters per 100 kilometers. 27 of those kilometers, those first 27, were completely electric. Now what's interesting, what we're doing on our test loop is setting the air conditioning to 22 degrees, and it was about 27 degrees, 28 degrees outside when we were driving, so a little bit warmer than we did a couple weeks ago with the Ford Fusion plug-in. But what is interesting is because we've got that HVAC on, we didn't get the range I got earlier when I did it with no air conditioning. 27 kilometers, still had about 9 kilometers of electric range, but it kicked on that gas motor. And the other thing that's interesting too, now that I've had a chance to use this more than I did 2 years ago, when you plug it into these level 3 charging stations, it tells you how much battery is left on the vehicle, at least what it's reporting, and it keeps reporting that it has 30% battery no matter what. So it won't let you use all 12 kilowatt hours of battery on this vehicle. Some of it stays reserved so that you can use the all-wheel drive system, because the way this all-wheel drive system works with 2 electric motors, you've got both the electrics running when you're in EV mode. Each one doesn't have enough power to really run the entire car, and then when you put it into all-wheel drive lock mode, I mean, it'll run those 2 electrics, but if you run out and it needs to use the gas powers the front wheels, and the single electric motor in the back powers the rear wheels, and you've got more or less an even amount of torque, at least between the front and the back in that setup. The people who are going to be buying this are likely looking at this vehicle because of this electronic all-wheel drive system. I mean, it works. Right now we're driving around in EV mode. It just rained here a couple minutes ago, really just before we came out on the road, and it drives just as you would expect any other all-wheel drive SUV crossover to drive. The benefit is it's all electric. The thing is, though, the interior here it feels dated. The whole car feels very dated, and considering we still don't have navigation, which may or may not be a good thing because Android Auto and Apple CarPlay work, so most people will probably just use that, but it is still a $52,000 crossover. There's no navigation, there's no ventilated seats. Everything works okay enough, as we talked about 2 years ago, but I mean, it doesn't excel at anything aside from the fact that it really is the only consumer-grade SUV crossover with a plug-in hybrid system that also has full-time four-wheel drive. That's a plus. That's probably the only plus. But there are a few things that we talk about specifically when it comes to these electric vehicles, and it has to do with the charging system. The charging port does not lock. So if you plug in your charger, anybody can come along and unplug it regardless. Now the door will lock, so as long as it's closed, it will lock and nobody can get in and I guess screw up the charging ports on it. But if you're in a public place and you've plugged in, anybody can come along and unplug it. Also, on a level 3, you cannot have any accessory power running or it will stop charging. If you unlock the car, it will stop charging. Now that was at a public charging station, so perhaps it had something to do with the way that it works there, but I have tested vehicles before that you can use a public charger and it will be fine if you unlock it. So you can't have the air conditioning running, you can't have the music running, and you can't unlock or lock the car, which was a problem for me. It started raining and I had all the windows down, and it killed the session. When you have the vehicle plugged in at home though, if you're using a level 2 solution like we have, I was able to get the air going, but not air conditioning. So if you want to have just air blowing on you, you can do that and listen to the music. you can charge it no problem. And you can also schedule both the air conditioning system to come on at a specific time on a specific day, and you can also do that for your charging. So if you live in an area that has an off-peak hours to have less cost for your charging, you can schedule it that way as well. So some pluses there, plus you have the ability to charge the battery and hold the battery charge with the buttons on the system here, plus that four-wheel drive lock. So there are some benefits to it. It's just not the perfect EV solution, and to be fair, there really isn't one that we've come across that does absolutely everything that we look for when it comes to a vehicle. Sure, the price has gone up by $2,000, the exterior look has improved, but it's still pretty conservative. The interior here, while the seats are a little comfier with this quilted interior design, haven't really changed a whole lot in its entire production run. If you're looking for an electric SUV, this might be the way to go. The 30-ish kilometers that you'll get with it is pretty doable on a daily basis, and it will help offset your overall fuel costs. Just don't expect a super modern interior on this, and who knows? I mean, Mitsubishi says they will be bringing a next generation Outlander to North America, so perhaps we will get an updated version of it and maybe get more battery out of it like they do in Europe. But if you have any questions about this 2020 Mitsubishi Outlander plug-in hybrid, please let me know in the comments below. You can comment down there, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and we will be doing a lot more electric vehicle coverage here on Test Drive, so stay tuned for that. Let me know what you'd like to see, and I will do my best to make it happen.